I'm Maddie, and 6 months ago, I walked away from the man I once loved to give birth alone in a hospital with no one by my side. I thought I was doing the right thing until he showed up at the NICU door, eyes shattered, whispering just one thing. "Oh God, is that my son?" I thought I had let go for good. But then, everything exploded. Before I share the rest of this story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you've ever gone beyond your limits for family. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. I woke to machines beeping and a nurse's face hovering above mine. My throat felt like sandpaper. The fluorescent lights burned my eyes. "Welcome back, honey," she said, adjusting something on my IV. "You've been out for a while." My hand moved to my stomach instinctively. Flat. Empty. Panic shot through me like electricity. "My baby!" "He's in the NICU. 2 pounds, 3 ounces. Fighter, that one." She smiled, but I could see the concern in her eyes. "Born at 28 weeks? You almost didn't make it yourself." The memories came flooding back in fragments. The bleeding that wouldn't stop. The ambulance ride alone. Julian's face when I'd told him about the pregnancy 3 months ago. The way his jaw had tightened, how he'd said, "I told you, Maddie, there's no room for children in my life." I hadn't argued. Hadn't cried. I'd simply packed my things and left Austin that night. No dramatic goodbye, no slammed doors, just survival. What he didn't know, what I'd discovered only days before leaving, was that his inheritance of the medical center came with strings. No children, no scandals. His father had made sure of that in the will. I'd overheard the lawyer's call, seen the contract on his desk. Julian stood to lose everything if word got out about us, about the baby. So I vanished. It seemed kinder than making him choose. The nurse was talking again. Something about recovery time, but all I could think about was my son. 2 pounds. God, that was nothing. That was a bag of flour. That was... "Can I see him?" She hesitated. "Soon. You need to get stronger first." 89 days. That's how long I lived in that hospital. My world shrank to the size of a NICU pod. Theo, I'd named him Theodore, meaning gift of God, because what else could he be, lay surrounded by wires and tubes, his skin almost translucent. I could see his heart beating through his tiny chest. Every 3 hours, I pumped milk he couldn't drink yet. Every 4 hours, they let me hold him for exactly 15 minutes. Kangaroo care, they called it. Skin to skin. His body against mine, weighing less than my sketchbook. I had no visitors. My mother had been gone since I was 16. Friends had drifted away during my relationship with Julian. He'd had a way of filling up all the space in my life. The other NICU mothers formed little support groups, but I couldn't join them. Their husbands brought coffee and took night shifts. Their mothers flew in from other states. I sat alone, watching Theo's oxygen levels, memorizing the rhythm of his monitors. On day 43, he stopped breathing. Just for a moment. The alarms screamed, nurses rushed in, and I stood frozen as they worked over his impossibly small body. When he started breathing again, when the crisis passed, I found myself in the hospital chapel, a place I'd never been, bargaining with a God I wasn't sure I believed in. That night, I did something I'd sworn I wouldn't do. I called Julian. My hands shook as I dialed the number I still knew by heart. It rang 3 times before his voice, professional and clipped. "Dr. Ford." "Your son almost died today." Silence. Then, "Maddie?" "I'm not asking for anything, someone else should know he exists." I hung up before he could respond, before I could hear whether his voice would soften or harden, before I could find out if I'd made a terrible mistake. The next morning, I found $1,000 in my hospital account. No name attached. I knew it was him. I also knew it wasn't enough to change anything. But Theo got stronger, ounce by ounce, breath by breath. His eyes, when they finally focused, were gray like storm clouds, like his father's. He appeared on day 51, standing in the NICU doorway like he'd materialized from my fever dreams. Julian still wore his scrubs. He must have come straight from surgery. His face, always so controlled, cracked when he saw Theo. "Jesus," he whispered. I didn't get up from my chair beside the incubator. You didn't have to come. You said. He stopped, swallowed. You said he almost died. He's stable now. Julian moved closer, each step careful, like he was approaching something wild. When he reached the incubator, his hand hovered over the porthole. Can I? You have to sanitize first. Gown, gloves, the works. I kept my voice clinical, matching his usual tone. His immune system is still developing. He followed the procedures precisely. Of course he did. Watching his surgeon's hands, usually so steady, tremble as he reached through the porthole to touch Theo's foot nearly broke my resolve. He's so small. He's gained 8 ounces. I couldn't keep the pride from my voice. Julian's finger traced Theo's tiny palm, and our son's hand closed around it reflexively. The sound Julian made, half laugh, half sob, was one I'd never heard from him before. His eyes, Julian said when Theo briefly opened them. There, I know. We sat in silence for a while, watching Theo sleep. Then Julian reached into his jacket and pulled out something that made my breath catch. My painting, the one I'd left half-finished in our apartment. A landscape of the hill country, all rust and gold, with storm clouds gathering on the horizon. You kept it, I said. I kept everything. He set it against the wall. I thought you might want something from home, for when you're here. Home. The word sat between us, heavy and complicated. I can't come back, Julian. I'm not asking you to. He stood to leave, then paused. But I'm not walking away from him. Not from this. After he left, I stared at the unfinished painting. In the corner, barely visible, was the date I'd started it. 2 days before I found out I was pregnant. Back when the future had seemed like something we were painting together. The offer came on day 70. You both can stay with me while he gets stronger. I've already set up a nursery. I laughed, sharp and bitter. You set up a nursery? You who had your assistant buy my birthday presents? Things change? He said it simply, like it wasn't a complete reversal of everything he'd ever claimed to be. My place is 20 minutes from the hospital. Better than the Ronald McDonald House. He was right, and I hated that he was right. The waiting list for family housing was weeks long, and Theo would need follow-up appointments for months after discharge. No expectations, I said. No playing house. This is temporary. Understood. His penthouse looked different. The sharp edges had been baby-proofed, the pristine white furniture replaced with washable fabrics. A state-of-the-art baby monitor sat on the coffee table next to medical journals. You did all this? I asked, running my hand along a cushioned corner guard. YouTube University, he said, almost sheepish. Did you know there are entire channels dedicated to baby-proofing? That night, as I lay in the guest room listening to Theo's breathing through the monitor, I heard Julian on the phone in his office. I'll need the next 3 months off. No, not negotiable. Family medical leave. In 10 years at the medical center, he'd never taken more than a long weekend. The Julian I'd known would have hired a night nurse, a day nurse, a whole staff. This Julian was learning to change diapers at 3 a.m., his surgeon's hands gentle but clumsy with the tiny snaps. One morning, I found him asleep in the nursery chair, Theo on his chest, both of them breathing in sync. I grabbed my sketchbook without thinking, capturing the moment in quick strokes. The way Julian's hand splayed protectively across Theo's back, the peace on both their faces. When Julian woke and saw me drawing, he didn't move. Sorry, he said quietly. He wouldn't settle in the crib. It's fine, I kept sketching. He likes the heartbeat. Did you know, Julian said, his voice still rough with sleep, that premature babies who have skin-to-skin contact gain weight faster? There's fascinating research on... Julian, I looked up from my sketch. You don't have to justify holding your son. Something shifted in his face then, vulnerable and raw. I don't know how to do this, Maddie. Any of it. Neither do I. I set down my pencil. But he's still here. We're still here. That's something. The conversations started during the 2 a.m. feedings. Maybe it was the exhaustion or the darkness or the way crisis strips you down to essentials. But suddenly we were talking about things we'd never touched in 2 years together. My father used to time my surgeries. Julian said one night, testing the bottle temperature on his wrist. Not real ones. Practiced sutures on oranges when I was 8. Said I'd never be precise enough if I didn't start young. I adjusted Theo in my arms, his weight finally feeling substantial. That's insane. That's Dr. Harrison Ford, Sr. Julian's smile was rueful. Everything was about the legacy, the medical center, the reputation. He planned my whole life before I could walk. He paused. When he died and left that stipulation about children, it almost felt like relief, like the decision was made for me. And now? He looked at Theo, who was making small sucking sounds in his sleep. Now I understand why he included that clause. He knew. If I had this, he gestured between us at our son, I'd choose differently. I'd never told Julian about my mother leaving, how I'd come home from school to find her note. I wasn't meant for this life. How I'd raised myself from 16 on, waiting tables and painting houses to pay for art supplies. She called once, I found myself saying. 3 years later, asked if I was okay, like she was checking off a box. I traced Theo's eyebrow with my finger. I swore I'd never do that to my own kid. Then I almost died having him, and all I could think was, God, what if I'm just like her? What if I'm not built for this? You slept on a hospital chair for 89 days, Julian said softly. You pumped milk every 3 hours even when he couldn't drink it. You fought for him when your own body was failing. That's not leaving, Maddie. That's the opposite of leaving. The bottle was empty. Theo needed burping. These small necessities saved us from the weight of what we were saying, gave us tasks to focus on while the words settled. I knew you were pregnant, Julian said suddenly. Before you left, your coffee cup in the sink, you'd switched to decaf. You stopped eating sushi. I knew, and I let you go because I thought... He trailed off. You thought what? My voice came out sharper than intended. I thought you'd be better off without me, that you'd find someone who could give you the life you deserved. White picket fence, normal hours, someone who knew how to be a father. He wouldn't meet my eyes. I was a coward. The anger hit me like a physical thing. You knew, and you just let me walk out? Theo startled at my raised voice, whimpering. I stood, pacing to soothe him, needing distance from Julian. Do you have any idea what these months were like? Alone, terrified, thinking I was protecting you from choosing between your son and your inheritance. What? Julian's head snapped up. What are you talking about? I heard the lawyer's call, saw the contract. No children or you lose the medical center. I was crying now, Theo fussing in response to my distress. I left so you wouldn't have to choose. Maddie. Julian stood, reaching for me, but I stepped back. I've been fighting that clause since the day you left. I have 3 lawyers working on it. The center means nothing if... Don't. I held Theo tighter. You don't get to rewrite history now. You let me go. You knew I was carrying your child and you let me go. I left him standing in the nursery and locked myself in the guest room. Through the door, I could hear him moving around, probably cleaning up the feeding supplies. Always so good at managing the aftermath. I left on a Tuesday, took nothing but my wallet and keys, drove through the night to Austin. Julian would wake to find me gone and Theo in the nursery, crying for his morning feeding. It was cruel. I knew it was cruel, but I needed space to think, to breathe, to figure out who I was outside of this fragile bubble we'd created. My old studio apartment was exactly as I'd left it. Paintings stacked against walls, brushes dried out in jars, everything covered in dust. I sat on the floor and called my friend Emma. Maddie, Jesus, where have you been? It's a long story. Can I crash with you for a few days? While Emma made up her couch and carefully didn't ask questions, my phone exploded with calls. Julian, the hospital. Julian again. I turned it off. Emma finally broke on day 2. There's an Amber Alert, Maddie, for you. Some doctor in San Francisco thinks you've been kidnapped or... What? I grabbed her phone, seeing my own face on the news website. He called the police? Says you left your premature infant and disappeared. Left your car, your purse, everything. Maddie, what the hell is going on? I called Julian immediately. He answered before the first ring finished. Thank God. Maddie, where are you? Are you okay? Is someone— I'm in Austin, you idiot. I'm fine. Call off the cops. Silence. Then, you left. You left him. The accusation in his voice made me see red. Like you left us? At least I made sure he was with his father. I've been— His voice cracked. He won't stop crying. I've tried everything. The nurses at the hospital said he's looking for you. His oxygen levels keep dropping and I don't know what to do. The image of Theo struggling to breathe knocked the anger out of me. Is he wearing the shirt I left? The one that smells like me? What shirt? In the drawer. The gray one. Put it in his crib, near his head, but not touching his face. I closed my eyes. And talked to him. He knows your voice. Come back! It wasn't an order. Julian Ford didn't beg, but this was close. Not for me, for him, please. Emma drove me to her lawyer friend's office that afternoon. You need to know your rights, she said. Whatever's going on. The lawyer pulled up public records at my request. There it was, the Ford Medical Center Trust with its archaic stipulations, but there was more. Recent filings, injunctions, a lawsuit dated the week after I'd left Julian, challenging the inheritance clause as contrary to public policy and natural rights. He's spending a fortune on this, the lawyer said, scrolling through documents. Multiple firms, expert witnesses. He's essentially arguing that forcing someone to choose between parenthood and inheritance is legally unconscionable. He looked up at me. If he wins, it could set precedent. But win or lose, he's torching his relationship with the board. They won't forgive this kind of public challenge. I stared at the screen. Julian was choosing Theo. Had been choosing him all along, while I'd been too hurt and stubborn to see it. I didn't go back to the penthouse. Instead, I rented a small studio in the Mission and sent Julian a message. I'm back in SF, we need to talk. Neutral ground. I spent 3 days finishing the painting I'd abandoned, the hill country landscape. But now the storm clouds were breaking, light streaming through in golden rays. In the foreground, barely visible unless you knew to look, were 3 small figures on the hillside. I had it delivered to his office at the hospital with a note. Coffee, Tuesday, 10 a.m., the place on Fillmore. He was already there when I arrived, looking exhausted. There were formula stains on his shirt. His usually perfect hair stuck up at odd angles. You look terrible, I said, sitting down. Theo's been cluster feeding every hour last night. He pushed a coffee toward me. Decaf, he'd remembered. The pediatrician says it's normal, but it's hell. I wrapped my hands around the mug. Julian, we need to figure this out. For real this time. No more running, no more assumptions. I love him, he said simply. I didn't know I could feel this way about another person. It terrifies me every single day. He met my eyes. And you, don't. I held up my hand. Let's just focus on Theo right now. Co-parenting, logistics. Right. He pulled out his phone, started scrolling through notes. Of course he had notes. I've been researching. There's a good daycare near the hospital for when I go back to work, or we could hire a nanny, though the attachment studies suggest— Julian. He looked up. Thank you for fighting the inheritance clause, for choosing him. His face softened. It wasn't a choice. The moment I saw him, it was never a choice. We talked for 2 hours. Schedules, feeding routines, doctor appointments. Careful conversations about practicalities while skirting around the bigger questions. When we were done, he reached into his jacket. I bought this last week, before you left. He set a key on the table between us. It's not the penthouse. It's a 2-bedroom in No Valley near the park. Good schools for later. There's space for a studio if you want to paint. I stared at the key. Julian, I'm not asking you to move in with me. I already put the deed in Theo's name. He's got a trust fund now, apparently. I just thought— He pushed the key toward me. You should have somewhere that's yours. Both of you. Somewhere you can't be forced to leave. The gesture broke something in me. I can't accept this. It's not for you. It's for him. Julian stood to leave, then paused. The penthouse was always my father's vision of success. Maybe it's time we figure out our own. 6 months later, I was painting in the light-filled corner of the Noe Valley house while Julian fed Theo mashed bananas. Most of it ended up on both of them. He's doing it on purpose, Julian insisted, dodging another flung spoonful. That's definitely intentional. He's 8 months old. He doesn't have the motor control for intentional food flinging. I added another stroke of yellow to the canvas, a commission piece, my first since Theo's birth. You didn't see the trajectory. Pure physics. Our son's a genius. Our son. The words still caught me sometimes. We weren't together, exactly. Julian kept his place. I had mine. But more often than not, we ended up in the same space. Dinner became a shared routine. Bedtime stories required both voices. Weekends blurred into family outings we didn't call dates. Mail came, I said, nodding toward the counter. There's something from the Monterey Gallery. Julian wiped banana off his cheek and reached for the envelope. His face changed as he read. Maddie, they want to show your work. A solo exhibition. I set down my brush, heart racing. What? We were deeply moved by your recent submissions, particularly the series documenting early parenthood and resilience. He looked up. You submitted the NICU sketches? I'd sent them on impulse, raw, honest drawings of our darkest days. Theo in his incubator. Julian asleep in the hospital chair. My own face, hollow-eyed but determined, reflected in the pod's plastic. I needed to do something with them, I said. They were just sitting in my sketchbook and… Julian crossed the room and kissed me. Simple as that. Like it was normal, like we did it every day, like the last 18 months hadn't been a careful dance of boundaries and hesitation. Sorry, he said, pulling back. I shouldn't have… I kissed him back, tasting bananas and coffee and possibility. Theo shrieked with delight, banging his spoon on the high chair tray. When we broke apart, laughing, I saw my future clearly for the first time. Not the one I'd planned, not the one Julian had inherited, but the one we were building one messy day at a time. Move in, Julian said. Both of you. Or I'll move here, or we'll find somewhere new. I don't care where, as long as… Yes. He blinked. Yes? Yes. I picked up Theo, who immediately grabbed my hair with banana-covered fingers. But you're in charge of food cleanup. I don't do bananas. That night, after Theo was asleep, I found the necklace on my pillow. A simple silver chain with a water droplet pendant. Inside, under glass, 3 elements. A strand of Theo's hair, one of mine, and, I looked closer, one of Julian's. It's medical-grade preservation, he said from the doorway. Should last forever. I know it's not a ring, but it's perfect. I fastened it around my neck, the pendant resting just above my heart. We're not a ring kind of family. No, he agreed, pulling me close. We're something else entirely. Later, I realized what I'd left out of the gallery submission. One final painting, still unfinished. I'd started it that first night in Austin, when everything was falling apart. 2 figures on a hillside, walking away from each other. I'd meant it to be an ending. Now I knew better. Sometimes you have to vanish. From your old life, your old self, your old fears, to find where you really belong. Sometimes the only way forward is to let everything break apart, then build something new from the pieces. I never finished that painting. Instead, I started a new one. 3 figures on the same hillside, walking together toward whatever comes next. The storm had passed. The sun was rising. And somewhere in the distance, home was waiting. We'd found our way back. Not to what we were, but to what we were meant to be. A family built on choice, not chance. On showing up day after day, even when it's hard. Even when you're scared. Even when you're covered in bananas. Especially then.
Sometimes to truly find where you belong, you have to lose everything, even yourself. But real love doesn't come from perfection. It comes from choosing each other, day after day, even when everything is messy, even when you're scared. Especially then, if you've ever faced a moment you thought you wouldn't survive, share your story in the comments. Because someone out there might need the same hope you once did.